So here's a tier list. I've never done one of these before. Should I move myself out of the way? Am I in the way a little bit? I can move down a little bit. I'll move myself over here. I'll just have to remember to move myself back. Then again, it wouldn't be so bad if I was hanging out down here the entire time. Okay, so the Psychopaths, the Dead Rising 1. As I said during the stream, I always thought that there were more Psychopaths in Dead Rising 1 than there actually are. So that's interesting. Let me think. How would I rate these? I think that it's like I would sort of rate them based on how interesting they are to fight and play against, like mechanically. And then I would rate them based on their story or their emotional impact. Maybe I would also sort of think about how useful their weapon is after the fact. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Twerp. I've Dead Rising 1, it's finished. But I am going to edit the stream so I can put it up on my YouTube channel later. I kicked Brock's ass. He only killed me once. So, Carlito. Carlito's a hard one because he technically has 3 phases, So Carlito's a psychopath that has 3 fights. The first one is a pretty solid introduction to how the boss fights work. You have someone there helping you. You have infinite handguns. He's a bit tricky, but he's not super oppressive. The second one is a pain in the ass, the sniper fight. The sniper fight, I think, is probably my least favorite of Carlito's fights. Because you've got the timer with Barnaby, and then he's also, if Brad dies, then you're also fucked. So Carlito's second fight is really rough. And then the third fight, I think I said earlier during the stream, I almost don't really consider it a fight. It's like, you're driving through the... he is driving through the tunnels and he harasses you as you're trying to get the bombs. You can fight him and you can kill him, but, he's just driving around and occasionally drops a pipe bomb on you. It's not that interesting. I think the other problem with Carlito is because he's the main story boss fight character, these recurring fights. I wouldn't say that you forget about him, but I say that besides his first fight, feels more like an obstacle than a real boss fight psychopath. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. So let's say good, and then I guess the other thing is like, once you go into that, and you don't get any really iconic weapon from Carlito. You don't get his sniper. You don't get his truck. You don't get... I actually don't know if you can get his SMG. I never bothered climbing up. But let's say that Carlito's a good base, and let's put him at the high B, because his plot significance is really important. But I think that if I was to break it, I think I'd probably put fight A, his first fight in A, his third fight in B, and his second fight in C. So let's compromise and put him in B. We'll put him at high B, though, because of his story potential. Kent. I like Kent. I'll admit it. I like the photography twink. I'll confess that. I think that he's an interesting foil to Frank. I think that he has 3 missions that tells a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end in the context of the game is really cool. You actually don't get the full Kent experience if you play the game as efficiently as I did. Because, you meet Kent, he's doing his thing, and then, he challenges you. And if you don't find a sexy enough picture, you fail. He laughs at you and he disappears. And that's really funny. And then if you do get a picture sexy enough, he gets jealous and obsessive. And then he he decides that he's going to just flat out kill somebody to get the perfect shot. But then that's not enough. Because if you don't get there in time, then he's got a thirst for blood now. It's not just enough that he beat you. He has to escalate. He wants to kill you now. That's pretty cool. That said, his fight is a real pain in the ass. Because, he's got a handgun. He does his kick thing. He's squirrely. And then, of course, if you get there later, you lose all of your gear, and you sort of just gotta improvise well after he strips you naked. Which, by the way, Kent, bit of a crush there, eh? So I think I like Kent better than other people like Kent. I think that Kent, I've seen other people play this game, or review or tier list Psychopaths. People don't seem to like Kent, but I think he's cool. I think he's chill. I'll leave him in B for now. Cletus, you are a real pain in the ass. You're at the bottom of my list for now, Cletus. And it's not even that, it's not that I don't like what he represents. Cletus is the psychopath that's paranoid, he's drunk, he's defending himself. I get it. I get it. It's scary. He's also one of the few psychopaths that you just stumble across. There's no mission, there's no foreshadowing. If you just go, ooh, there's a gun shop, you go there, he's there, and he's defending the gun shop and his guns. That's cool. But his fight is just so difficult. I'm doing a tier list for the Dead Rising Psychopaths, Ferris. Because I finished playing Dead Rising 1, and while it's fresh in my mind, I wanted to review the Psychopaths. And so, yeah, I feel like Cletus's boss fight is not that well designed. He gets 6 shots in a row with a shotgun that has an irregular spread. And I feel like if you had options other than just standing behind a display stand, if there was a way for, even just for making Frank crouch, duck, fall prone, lay flat. I feel like his fight was not designed well for the way that the engine goes. And yeah, you're right. If you jump over the counter to fight him, he just grabs you and throws you off. There's no way to do melee damage to him that I'm familiar with. And so I think that's why I've got to put Cletus down at my bottom for now. And of course, his weapon is just a shotgun. It's like a big deal. You can get shotguns from his shop after you kill him. It's nothing special in my opinion. The Convicts. I love Gone Guru. It's a great song. I love what the Convicts represent. I love the chaos of them storming through the park with their truck and machine gun just gunning everything down. I think that their introductory cutscene is jarring and frightening. But I feel like if the Convicts were just a single one-off boss fight, I would actually maybe put them in A tier. But they're not. I cannot express how frustrating it is when the Convicts respawn the first time that you beat them. And yeah, they don't have a death scene. As far as I can tell, you can't even find the truck after you kill them. You can only get it the one time that you kill them. You can't find the truck anywhere else in the park, at least that I've seen. So they're cool, but I think that they would be so much higher on my list if they were a one-off boss fight. Even if they never went away unless you killed them, even if they were there the entire 72 hours before the military showed up, I feel like, that would be fine. That'd be cool. Have them be a constant dangerous threat. But having them respawn and just how difficult... here's the other thing I don't like about the Convicts, is that they're so impossible to beat unless they glitch out. Unless they're just driving as fast as they can into a tree, there is nothing you can do to, adequately take care of them. Even in this let's play, the time that when I defeated the Convicts reliably is when I could grab a sniper rifle from Cletus's shop. So yeah, I'm afraid that the Convicts are gonna have to be low C. Let's just put them in D for now. I like the idea, I like what they represent, but the Convicts gotta go at the bottom for now. Adam! Was there any doubt? Adam is S tier. Adam is Dead Rising. Adam is the moment that when I was first playing Dead Rising that I was completely sold. It's like, okay, this is the greatest game ever. It's like, for one thing, clowns. Clowns are terrifying. He comes out of nowhere. Like, yeah, you're saying, you get the call that the roller coaster is out of control, and that's cool. That's, it's like, okay, gonna go take care of that. I'm pretty sure the last thing anyone expected the first time they got there was a clown juggling chainsaws that would then breathe fire and throw knives at you. And he is a dangerous fight. Like, oh my god. He is so hard for how early in the game he shows up. Like, as this list proves, he's technically the like, 5th boss fight that you can encounter. Because I think you can encounter Cletus before you can encounter Adam. But, beyond the Carlito fight and the convict's obstacle, I think that Adam is probably most people's first psychopath fight. And then he absolutely wrecks you, just completely. Like, he blocks he blocks ranged attacks, he shreds melee attacks. The thing about Adam is that he is bullshit, but it's fun bullshit. He's so much fun to fight, and when you finally beat him, it's a real accomplishment. And then, yes, while I absolutely refused to use his chainsaw during this playthrough, the only reason I did that is because it absolutely destroys the game. The mini chainsaw, especially with even just one book, but there are 3 that affect it. The serial killer book, the tool book, and the entertainment book. If you have all 3 books, you can basically, like, not even triple. It's like multiply it by 9 or even 27 times durability. You basically never need more than 1 or 2. And the mini chainsaw shreds through zombies. It shreds through other psychopaths. I'd say if there's anything wrong with Adam, it's that his weapon does break the game. But at the same time, when the game is hard as Dead Rising, I don't blame anyone for wanting to use it. And, while I was definitely being stubborn, I get why people were, telling me in my stream to grab one. Because it's like, yeah, it's strong. It's great. It's a great weapon. And yeah, his scoop also opens up the really helpful shortcut between Wonderland Plaza and Paradise Plaza, which is just, like, so helpful. Like, even without the convicts in the park, just being able to go back and forth between Wonderland and Paradise is great. So yeah, no, like, Adam is definitely S tier. He just has to be. Steven. This is my store! Gosh. Steven actually used to freak me out. When I was younger, I could not stand the sound of men yelling at the top of their lungs like that. And I feel like Adam definitely represents how goofy and crazy fun this game can be. I feel like Steven really represents the spirit of the game, He's just a guy that's gone, like, absolutely nuts with paranoia and stress. He's just completely delusional at this point. And his weapon is intimidating, even if it's not that great, either when he's using it or when you're using it. A shopping cart full of blades and spikes, it's cool. It's just not that useful. And then he has a shotgun. Steven's great. I absolutely love it. And he's also, I think, besides Carlito, I think he's the only mandatory story boss, isn't he? Him and Larry, yeah. That's interesting. I think Steven definitely has to go above Kent. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But the question is Steven better than Carlito? I don't think so. I don't think that Steven's... Here's the thing. Steven would be better than 2 of Carlito's fights if we were counting each of Carlito's fights separately. In that case, maybe he is better than Carlito. If he's better than 2/3 of Carlito, maybe he deserves to be up there. I'll think about it some more, but let's put Steven as a tentative A right now. the thing that brings him down is that his fight just isn't that bad. It's not that tough. His weapon isn't that great. But I think thematically, he works really well. And, yeah. He's also the first non-Carlito mandatory boss fight, so, you know, he gets points for that. Cliff. Cliff. Cliff's a great fight. I think that he's better than Carlito. His song, is it just called Slave, or is it called Slave to the Misery? No, it's not Slave to the Misery. That's a totally different song. I think it is just Slave, isn't it? Anyway, his song was one of the songs that was like on my playlist from, like, you know, as soon as I played this game. Day one. In fact, I think it's the first song, Dead Rising song, I put onto my playlist. I think I even, like, pirated it way back and put it on my Walkman, just so you know how old I am. And of course, he's also, I think, the first really tragic psychopath you fight. You know, Steve and Adam have their moments. Adam's laughter sounds more like he's sobbing hysterically, or he's laughing so he doesn't sob hysterically. And Steven briefly breaks out of his delusions when he's dying. But Cliff, genuinely, is a tragic character. Like, I have my criticisms, you know, but I think that his story is very well done. It's very sad, and it's a hard fight. It's a cool fight. The only thing I don't like about Cliff's fight is when he, you know, hops into the tunnels right away. And I think that's just sort of an AI thing. Because I think that, you know, he's not consistent with it. Sometimes he'll stay and fight you for a bit. Other times he'll just, you know, jump off the roof, then run to a teleport, and then teleport away, and then just do that over and over. And that's frustrating. And his machete is great. It's a lot of fun. It's cool considering how absolutely caked in blood it is. And he's big, and he's sexy, and he's a G-DILF. How often do you get that all in one character? So yeah, I think that Cliff goes above Steven. Isabella. Oh, I love Isabella. She is just gorgeous. She is beautiful. But her fight is absolute ass. It's just not a fun fight. It's an indoor fight. She's on a motorcycle. The invincibility frames when she's driving around is difficult to use. Because of the way that Dead Rising plays, it's really difficult to hit her with melee weapons when she's on the motorcycle. And it's difficult to aim fast enough when she's speeding around. I feel like if Dead Rising was a first-person game, Isabella would actually be a pushover, you know? And it's like, you know, I love Isabella, but I just feel like her fight also doesn't really make sense. Like, okay, you know, you catch her at the grocery store, getting her medicine for Carlito, and she sees you. She gets on her motorcycle, and then she tries to kill you? It's like, okay. I don't get it. I don't know why she just immediately goes aggro on you, trying to kill you and everything like that. I feel like they kind of just put it in there just for the sake of it. Like, I feel like what they probably wanted to do is have it be a boss fight where you're supposed to chase her. I feel like the original intent of that was to chase Isabella and, you know, just chase her, follow her to the lair, or knock her off, or something like that. She's a great character. She's drop-dead gorgeous. And her motorcycle is fantastic. You know, I love driving her motorcycle from the North Plaza all the way down to Alfresca Plaza. It is so much fun. But yeah, I just feel like her fight doesn't make sense, and it's really janky mechanically. So I think that she actually goes under Cletus for me for now. It's a shame. But hey, you know. Joe. Joe's a cop. Joe scares me. I feel like, you know, I feel like Joe is probably the most, like, alongside the convicts, is one of the most evil characters in this game. She is absolutely, like, relentless. She's ruthless. She's all but stated to be, absolutely abusing those poor women. It's just implied that it's stated that she's already killed several of them. And, I was cracking jokes during the fight with her, but it's actually really disturbing, That said, I don't think I've ever used her taser. You get a taser from defeating her, and it's underwhelming. What'd be really funny is if her taser actually stunned, like, human enemies. Like, like they stunned psychopaths, or they stunned, like, the occultists or special forces. That'd be fun. And the fight itself is relatively basic. Like, she can shove her nightstick up your butt. She can shoot you with a handgun. She can stun you and then, drop kick your nuts, which is pretty funny. I think that for fear factor and for the story that her case tells, I think she goes above Cletus for me. Yeah, I think I put her there for now. Okay, the Hall family. The Hall family. The Hall family. What do we do with the Hall family? The Hall family are interesting because it's like, for one thing, they're Carlito's sniper fight, but now there's 3 of them. They all run away. They don't have any melee attacks, so the second that you start getting close to them, they immediately turn tail and run. I think that, like, if they had, like, a hunting knife, to, like, they would try to, like, swat at you and then start running away, I think that would be so much funnier. But no, they pretty much just split up, and they just shoot at you from sniper rifles. And they don't have their own death cutscene. That said, I do think that their fight is more interesting than Isabella's fight. And their cutscene is pretty chilling. They're just sniping people. Not just zombies, but people. Anyone that comes into their area. I think that the most interesting thing about the Hall family is their relationship to each other, and specifically Thomas. I've seen other people talk about Dead Rising 1 and their tier listing the Psychopaths, and they kind of wish that they could rescue Thomas. And I sort of get it. I sort of understand. It's like Thomas clearly was not cool with what his dad and brother were doing. But at the same time, it's like, he was still participating. He was still trying to kill you. And I think it kind of would have been interesting if you did kill, what are their names? Jack and... Is it Richard? Reed? Is it Richard Hall? What's his first name? Anyway, I think it would have been interesting if you managed to kill Jack and Richard first, then you would get a cutscene with Thomas, but he refuses to go with you because you just fucking killed his brother and his dad. I feel like that would have been interesting. That would have been really cool, and if they had done something like that, I think I would put them higher. But ultimately, I just don't think they're interesting. They're a sniper runaway, get back here boss fight. So yeah, I think that they go above Isabella, but they are below Cletus, I think. Sean and the True Eye Cultists. I guess like Reed, Richard, it's Roger. Thank you, Fate. Yeah, it's Roger. The fact, he says Jackson Thomas's names, which is why I know it. But, yeah. Okay. Sean, the leader of the True Eye Cultists. He's interesting. It's funny. It's like, I think that cults are scary. Cults are terrifying. But I feel like cults in video games, cults in media in general, rarely captures what's truly terrifying about them. And I understand why. It's like, that's too real. Hashtags, too real for me. But I love the mystery that surrounds Sean and the True Eye cultists. Because it's like, is this a response to the zombie uprising, or has Sean been doing this for a long time? Is he seizing the opportunity? What has him so obsessed with killing people in this, that it's spilling innocent blood will grant him and his followers salvation? Is it petty revenge, or is it something else? The unknowns to Sean make him so fascinating to me. And of course, it's just badass that his weapon is a giant sword. It's a hard one. He's definitely high, but I'm trying to decide, where does he fall between Adam, Cliff, and Steven? I think he might be above Steven. I think his weapon is cooler than Steven's. As I said, he has this air of mystery to him because, how long has he been doing this? He does introduce a really bastard faction into the game. The True Eye cultists absolutely suck. They're everywhere. They take a lot of damage, especially if you're being stubborn and not using the mini chainsaw. They can stun you with a really easy to miss animation. In which case, then, you get kidnapped and stripped naked. Which, I get it, that's fun. But, yeah. And then, of course, once you beat him, you get the best book in the game. Again, I didn't use it because I'm stubborn. But his book makes it so that survivors, are more easy to control. They're not sobbing as often. They're following you into danger. They will... survivors that normally won't will wield weapons. It's great. It's fantastic. I think that Sean's definitely going to go above Steven and below Cliff for now. I think that's a good place for him. Paul. Gosh, where do we put Paul? Where do we put Paul? Paul's a weird one. His boss fight is not that interesting. He runs away from you and he drops pipe bombs. That's about it. His fight sucks. I like the variation that he brings to the psychopath scene because he's clearly snapped, but he's also not exactly out of his mind. He's taking advantage of the situation, and he's a little delusional, but he's not crazy. There's also nothing that implies that he's actually hurt anybody yet. He was, going to. He was thinking about it, but I don't think that they ever imply that he's killed anybody yet. I don't think they've implied that. What's interesting is that, by the nature of the game, we don't actually hear a lot about what his victims think, what was their relationship to him? Were they people that he knew? Is this a long-running thing? Or is this just, he saw his tormentors in them, Paul asks a couple of interesting questions. That said, his fight isn't that interesting, and his Molotovs aren't that useful. But they're more useful than Joe's stun gun. But his fight's not as interesting as Joe's. And that's saying something, because Joe's got a really plain fight. It's cool that you can rescue him. That is cool. I think I've got to put him below Joe. But so then the question then is, would I put him below Cletus? Because there's only one of them, he's not as annoying as the Hall family. I mean, because he's running, he's not on a motorcycle, he's not as annoying as Isabella or the convicts. I think he's less annoying than, I think he's less difficult to fight, and he's less, overwhelming than Cletus is. So I think I will put him below Joe, but above Cletus. Larry! My man! My main man, Larry. I don't know if he's an A tier. He might actually be a B tier. I love Larry. Larry comes out of nowhere. He's the only other psychopath other than Steven that's not Carlito or Isabella to be a storyline boss fight. He comes out of nowhere. He kills the main antagonist of the story. And he's completely delusional. but not in a he's not delusional in the same way that like Steven or Cliff or Adam or even Paul is. He's like dissociated, you know? It's creepy. He's completely dissociated, and he's like he sees Frank as a customer, but then he sees Carlito just as meat to eat and to chop up and grind up into hamburger patties. At the same time, he's not completely out of his mind. He's lucid enough to recognize the zombies as spoiled meat, and that, you know, you have to grind up meat, otherwise it's going to turn into a zombie. He's lucid enough to do that. At the same time, as I proved during this Let's Play, he doesn't attack you. You have to start the fight with him. And that's fascinating to me. There's something so fascinating to me about this idea that the psychopath isn't going to fight you. You have to fight the psychopath. And his cleaver is a lot of fun. It just completely shreds through zombies. I actually don't know if his meat cleaver is different than the other cleavers you can find. I actually can't remember. I cannot remember if the other meat cleavers in the game are the same as Larry's cleaver. And of course, his fight is just a lot of fun. You're in a meat locker full of hanging steer carcasses. He chucks them at you. He runs you. He sacrifices you to the entity and disembowels you. He is cool. And as I said, he's got a better body than me, so I think I've got to put him above Carlito, actually. Yeah. The only thing that I think Larry is missing is that he's missing a little bit of personality. His death scene is very underwhelming because the game is all like, okay, yeah, you beat the bosses, come on, let's get back to Carlito. You don't throw him into his own meat grinder. He doesn't have any like speech or moment of clarity. He just gasps for air and dies. Sad. So yeah, I think the only thing that holds Larry back is that he could use a little bit more characterization. Just a little bit. Yeah. He's all implications. That's cool. But you do get a lot of character in his first cutscene. His first cutscene is so charming. He's like, oh, you're a customer. You know, the best meat in town. You can trust him. He's a butcher. Yeah. Yeah, I think that Larry's... Is Larry better than Sean? Than Steven? No, he's not. No, he's not. Yeah, I think Steven's a bit better than Larry. Helicopter. You go below the convicts. You have no character. I tried for like 10 minutes to kill you and nothing. You almost ended my run. You don't have music. Not that I heard. Yeah, the helicopter sucks. Like, I genuinely forgot that if you could even defeat the helicopter or not. I tried, but, you know, it's even harder than the convicts. You don't get a rocket launcher. You don't get a turret. You know, like, the funny thing is, I think that if you had access to the convict's turret, the helicopter fight actually would have been kind of cool. But you don't. Not that I know of. So yeah, the helicopter fight, I think it's the worst fight in the game, personally. Brock. Brock's a weird one. Brock represents the greater conflict of the story. Brock is the fist of the, you know, American military machine, you know? He's there to do a job. And if that job involves slaughtering American citizens and zombies and terrorists, he's gonna do it. At the same time, they pretty much all but state that he's the one that, you know, led the operation to mop up Santa Cabeza. And thus implicitly is the one responsible for Carlito and Isabella's parents' deaths. That said, his fight isn't that interesting. His fight feels like it should be cooler than it is. I love what they do with his fight. With, you know, you taking down the automated tank, and then he gets the upper hand on you because he turns off the automated firings on it. That's cool. That's intimidating. That he fights you barehanded on the tank, surrounded by an ocean of zombies. That is so cool. But I just feel like Dead Rising wasn't made for that kind of fight. Like, you know, it's janky. It's like, you know, you're not throwing fists with this guy on equal measure. You're flailing around, spasming, just randomly kicking in random directions because, you know, mashing buttons. And then of course, maybe it was just this playthrough, but he just kept doing that bullshit move where he just gets behind me, grabs me, and chokes me out. Yes, like, yes, harder, daddy. But it just drains like 2 or 3 HP every time, and there's like nothing you can do about it. Maybe it was telegraphed in a way that was so fast my like ancient eyes couldn't even notice it. It's kind of like what I said with Isabella, and yeah, and the helicopter. I just feel like Dead Rising as an engine wasn't made for the kind of fight that Brock gives you. And as well, Brock himself isn't that interesting. He's not given enough time to give a really solid characterization, you know? He shows up, he's a little scary, but he's a hard one because I feel like if he was too hammy, then he would be a cartoon character, and that would undermine his, you know, his grim theming of Dead Rising's, you know, what Dead Rising has to say. But as a result, it also means that he's not that interesting. I do wish that his music was louder. I feel like it is the climax of the game, especially considering he isn't talking very much during the fight. He just laughs occasionally and has like a really quick, quiet one-liner. I feel like his song could have been more dramatic. Like, I cracked a joke, but, you know, it's like, I do feel like it's like Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, the Senator Armstrong fight. It's like, it has to be this way, you know? He's so grounded. He feels like he's almost from a different game. So, I think that means he goes in C for me. But the question is, where? Because as I said, I do like a lot about his fight. The theming, the setup, even just the concept of it being an unarmed hand-to-hand fight. That's cool. That's interesting. Is he below Joe for me? He's above Paul for sure, but is he above Joe? No, I think he's gonna go below Joe for me. Okay, let's rearrange this a little bit. I think that when I think of Dead Rising Psychopath fights, I think of Adam and Cliff. Completely. 100%. I feel like these two guys completely represent what Dead Rising Psychopath fights are to me. You know, they take, you know, not necessarily regular people, because, you know, it's like a 9'9" Vietnam War veteran who could bench press an elephant and a mad clown juggling chainsaws aren't exactly normal people. I'll admit that. But they're awesome. Their weapons are great. The songs are really fun. Like, there's a reason why Adam's theme song was Frank's theme song in Marvel vs. Capcom. It is just iconic. Like, it immediately, like, says Dead Rising. So yeah, I think those guys make up my S tier. And so my A tier, then, I think, are... funnily enough, I feel like Sean almost is an S for me. I think that the only thing that really keeps him from being an S is, like... I don't know. Like, him being a little hammier, or maybe, like, getting, like, maybe one more detail about who he is or who he was before he became the leader of the True Eye cult would probably push him over to S for me. Like, was he like a priest at a at a church? Was he like a teacher? Was he just some guy? Like what? If we got any explicit hint into who he was before he became the leader of Trueheart, I think he would be an S for me. But otherwise, he's the top of A tier for me. And then Steven and Larry, those are fun. I think that they're in my A tier because they sort of represent in my mind the idea of a normal person who's just absolutely lost it in this situation. Like they are like the normal guys who have become dangerous. And their songs kick ass too. Their weapons are okay, Their role in the plot is interesting because, as I said a couple times during this list, they're normal people that still somehow are like part of the story, Steven interrupts you because, you're trying to get medicine for Brad, and Larry's the one that kills off Carlito. That's crazy. Yeah, I think that they've got to make up my A tier. Now, I actually think that I'll move Joe and Brock up to B tier, I think. Yeah, I think I'm satisfied with that. B tier, I think, is like, they're good. They're fun. These are solid boss fights that I think, have something interesting to say, but they're not necessarily special, As I said, I think I would put Carlito's first fight in A tier if his three different fights were measured separately against each other. So him being in B is a compromise. As I said, I love the story that Kent tells, beginning, middle, end. And just all the different ways that it plays out. Like, I think the coolest thing about Kent is that everything that happens with him can play out differently depending on how you react to him and how well you do his challenges. So he's just really cool. It's just a shame that his fight is really difficult and it's not that interesting. I mean, even the thing you get from him is just a photography book that raises your points near the end of the game when you're not really going to be taking photos for the points anymore. So that's kind of a shame. Joe. It's kind of funny how at a certain point I was sort of measuring everyone against Joe and whether or not they were more interesting or less interesting than her. Her fight leaves an impression. I'll say that. If her stun gun was more fun to use, I think she would probably be higher. Or if yeah, I think that I guess this is sort of my way of saying that to me, Joe is the standard Dead Rising Psychopath boss fight to me. That feels really weird to say. And I just finished explaining Brock. His fight is great thematically, but just mechanically for Dead Rising, it's not. It's too jank to be better than it is. And yeah, Brock didn't need to be a cartoon character, but he didn't leave that big of an impression on me. He felt very little generic to me. And then we have C tier. This tier is almost exclusively here because they're annoying. They're cool, but they're annoying. Paul's weapon isn't that interesting, and he runs away from you a lot. The coolest thing about Paul is that you can rescue him. Like Kent, his outcome can be different depending on what you do. Of course, the first time that happened, I didn't know that you could rescue him. Because it's like, how are you supposed to know that you could pick up a fire extinguisher and actually use it? Like, But that's still kind of cool. Cletus is annoying. I like him. I love him thematically. I love this little story that he tells. But his fight sucks. The Hall family is basically taking the worst aspects of Cletus and Paul and mixing them together. I feel like if there was just a little scene that gave them a bit more characterization and a death scene, they would have been really cool. But yeah. Isabella, as I said during her thing, why is she even a boss fight? Why did she try to kill you? I don't get it. And fighting her on a motorcycle, that sucks. That sucks. I'm sorry, Isabella. I love you. And then we have D tier, as I said, the convicts would actually be really high if they were just a one-off boss fight. But no, they have to keep respawning. The only way to beat them is if they glitch out or if you've already got some insane weapons on you right from the get-go. I love what they bring to the game, but they're just not fun to fight. Yeah. And Helicopter, just no. Just no. And yeah, that was my Dead Rising 1 Psychopath tier list. That's pretty much everything that I had to say about that. It was a lot of fun revisiting Dead Rising, and thank you all for hanging out with me throughout it. It was really cool. I didn't actually expect to play through it so quickly and so enthusiastically. I mean, this is just part 3, isn't it? There's only been 3 streams of Dead Rising. I just love this game and was just completely willing to commit to it all the way. I'll probably play Dead Rising 2 next week, I think. I think I'll try to make time on my next weekend to get started with Dead Rising 2. I'll edit up these streams. I'll probably separate the tier list from the playthrough, honestly, and put the tier list as its own little video on YouTube. So yeah, if you had fun and you want to hang out some more, I'll see you around and we'll play Dead Rising 2. Hell yeah. Okay, good night, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. I had a great time.